we've now been joined, I think by Zoom, by Dr. Paula Bates from University of Louisville. Are you there, doctor?
I am. Hello there.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. I have to tell you, yesterday when I saw that notice sent out by the university, it grabbed my attention. So many people hoping for potential breakthroughs. Can you give us a quick, if you would, synopsis of what exactly it is you think you have hit upon here in your research?
Sure. Well, we have been working for several years on a drug that we're developing for cancer. This drug has already been tested in patients and has shown to be quite safe with no serious side effects. And I had an idea that perhaps because of the way it works, it binds to a particular protein that's often involved in helping viruses to hijack cells, that maybe it would work with the new coronavirus. And so I collaborated with my colleagues here who are studying the new coronavirus, and they were able to test it in their cell assay and were able to show that it could almost completely inhibit the infection of cells by the new virus. And so we're very optimistic that we can move quickly towards a human clinical trial of this new drug.
Give me your assessment then, and I'm sure you're aware of what's going on across the country in terms of research being done at a lot of universities, and there have been some other developments on this front, but the fact that you would come forward yesterday and actually go public with a potential breakthrough, how significant is this, and how confident are you in this at this stage of the game?
Yes, as you mentioned, there's a lot of research going on. There's literally hundreds of clinical trials already to test different treatments. So this is one of many. I'm optimistic, just as I say, because of the past experience with this drug and the lack of side effects, and also having shown it with the actual virus. So it only a handful of places in the country are able to use the virus for research at the moment. And so Louisville is one of the few that could have done this test. So I'm optimistic, but again, there are many things. Hopefully within a year we'll have a vaccine, but in the meantime, we need to quickly try and as many drugs as we can to find the ones that work.
So let's be clear here then. What you're talking about here, this new drug, it's not a vaccine, of course. This would be something used to treat people infected with COVID-19.
That's correct. Yes, what we're hoping is that it could be used in a couple of different ways. Perhaps people who had been infected and were feeling ill, but had not yet developed severe disease. It would help to prevent that from getting worse. Or perhaps that people who had severe disease could be treated, and by preventing the kind of virus spread further in their body, it might help those people too.
So is there any doubt in your mind, based on what you've seen to this point, that this would save lives?
It's always, we have to be cautious. It's an early stage discovery. So far, we've just shown it works in cells. I'm very optimistic about this and other treatments that are out there. But it will take, a couple of months at least before we can start clinical trials to see if it works in human. It's very important to do those, controlled clinical trials to make sure it works before we can recommend it for everybody.
Is there a name of this drug? Do you have a name for it?
It doesn't really have a name yet, no.
No name yet. Okay, now my understanding then is to get to clinical trials, has the university now reached out to the FDA? Where do we stand in that process?
We're in that process. We're in the planning process. The FDA has been moving quickly, and with the past safety data, we're hoping that will help us move even more quickly. And so we're in the process of designing a clinical trial and finding a partner to work with us to run this trial.
Okay, and maybe you can go in a little more detail, as I read up on this, on how this actually works. It sounds to me it's something with DNA. It's, what is it, an aptamer or something, which actually then can kind of bind and protect your cells so the virus can't attach to anything? Is that how this works?
Well, we don't understand fully how it works yet. We've seen that it does block virus infection, but we're not sure exactly which stage. My theory is that it binds this aptamer. It's almost like a chemical antibody, binds to a particular protein that's on the surface of the cell, and that protein is known for other viruses to help them get into the cell, to move around the cell, to reproduce themselves inside the cell. And so we're thinking that we might be blocking all of those processes. But we still need to do that research to figure out exactly how it works. But as of now, we've just seen that in the cells, it does block the virus from infecting and damaging the cells.
How would this medicine be administered? I'm just curious. Let's say when it gets to the clinical stage, is it an IV drip on a daily basis? Or I'm just curious, how would it be administered?
That's right, actually, yes. So we would use it the same way that it was used to treat cancer patients, and that would mean it would be, mostly for patients who are already in the hospital, and they would get an IV drip every day to receive this drug, probably over a period of days.
Now, when you mention cancer treatments, and I guess, so this has been used with success in cancer treatments, correct?
It has been tested in clinical trials in cancer treatment. So those have kind of not completed yet. So what has been completed already is the safety trials and some, early look into activity. And what was reported was that there were a few cases where they had a good activity, but there wasn't a large number of patients who responded. So research is ongoing to try and figure out how to best use this for the treatment of cancer. But for the virus, it seems to work at an even lower dose than it does for killing cancer cells. So that makes us, again, cautiously optimistic that this might work in patients.
Yeah, really last question. We just have a couple of minutes here left with you. But yeah, understanding, of course, the situation we're in this pandemic, people dying, and the idea of the word fast track. Obviously, you want to make sure any drug ever administered to any patient is not harmful. And when you go faster, sometimes you cut corners with drugs, but you say we have to go that way to try to save people. Is one potential advantage to fast tracking this, as you said earlier, this drug does not appear to have too many toxic side effects. So at the very worst, maybe it just won't work, but it's not going to make you sick. So maybe you do, not you, but maybe as this moves forward, you cut some of those corners as the FDA makes an approval, hoping it works.
Yeah, that's exactly our hope, is that based on what's been seen in the past clinical trials, that this won't have any severe side effects. And so, as you say, can move a little quicker than if we were starting from scratch. Okay, best guess on when we may see these trials start? Again, time is of essence, of course, and potentially after trials, maybe then if it's approved to go to some that are very sick. Any timetable as you look ahead? Yeah, a lot of these things are kind of beyond our control with the FDA and funding situation. But best case scenario, we're talking about months as opposed to years for what typically happens in drug development. So we're optimistic that this, the goal is to find something before a vaccine becomes available, which will take about a year, at least a year. And so we're hoping to get something to patients in that time frame so that we can do the most benefit. All right, if you would, just before we wrap things up, give us a little bit more of the background about what you did or do. I was reading up on how you are a researcher, a cancer researcher, but I mean in terms of developing new drugs and some of what you've had a hand in, and also if you would touch on what a regional biocontainment lab is. There's just a handful of those around the country. Yeah. So our regional biocontainment lab is here in Louisville. It's part of the University of Louisville and the Center for Predictive Medicine. I'm a cancer researcher. I'm just interested in finding drugs that are able to kill cancer cells and not harm healthy cells mainly. But the other thing I do is work with researchers actually all over Kentucky to teach them and help them to develop any ideas or discoveries they've made and turn them into products. So a lot of times, researchers, they find a lot of knowledge and they publish papers, but sometimes it doesn't go further than that. And what we want is for more research that's done in universities to get turned into drugs and tests and devices to help patients. And so we work with the University of Kentucky, and we have a network that includes all of the public universities and colleges in Kentucky, and we try to help them develop these products. And I'm just curious how this works. You work for a university. I don't know exactly where all the different funding comes from, but you're not a pharmaceutical company. But let's just say, hypothetically, this drug or some drug finally is proven to work against COVID. What happens? How would that be distributed? Is that something then that a pharmaceutical would link up with the university? How does that get distributed? Yes, that would be what would be needed for drug development. So far, some of the coronavirus-related research is being supported by the University of Louisville. In the past, the research on these types of drugs has been supported by various, federal funding agencies. But going forward, certainly you would have to have a pharmaceutical company or another agency involved that was able to fund the costs of manufacturing the drug and scaling up and doing the clinical trials and so on. These things cost typically millions of dollars. And so yes, we would almost certainly have to team up with a pharmaceutical company to do this.
I have to ask you, your staff had sent me some video of the lab where a lot of this research is being done. I'm just curious today, with you and your staff, I mean, is this like a 24/7 project for you? Are you going back to the lab when you get done with me here? I'm just curious.
Well, actually, I'm sheltering at home,
Okay.
as are many of us. We have some wonderful staff. I think probably, I can't see the video you're looking at, but I think probably what you're looking at is the regional biocontainment lab, and those staff are very hard at work. They're the one we're allowed to do research on coronavirus, and so those staff are very hard at work. As you say, not quite 24/7. They're keeping their distance and doing everything very safely, but working very hard to get this research moving forward. And I'm fortunate to be able to work from home, since I'm the one that is coming up with the ideas rather than doing the actual research myself. Kenneth Palmer and his group are the wonderful people who are conducting the coronavirus research here in Louisville.
And I'm curious, to this point, since the alert was sent out, I guess the first information on this went out yesterday, I imagine. Have you heard from much media, or what's the reaction been?
Yeah, it's been very exciting. I've been doing a lot of these TV interviews, which is unusual for me, but it's very exciting to see how excited people are about it and how positive. Again, we always try to strike a balance between giving people hope and letting them know the kind of great research that scientists here are doing, but at the same time, not trying to overhype it and say we have the cure or anything. That's not true. There's still a way to go. We don't know for sure if it will work. We're just cautiously optimistic that something good will come from this.
Right, and the bottom line is they had to have asked you, and you wouldn't have sent out that notice, an alert, unless you felt there was some basis for that optimism. Yes,
exactly. And I say our evidence at the moment is that this can block the activity of the virus in cells. It's still a long way to go to showing that same thing happens in humans. But again, as we've discussed, the fact that it seems to be a very safe drug to try in humans gives us some hope that it will be useful.
And last question before I let you go, I just more questions that keep popping into my head. If and when when you do the trials, do you imagine if someone's ill with the coronavirus and you start giving them this treatment, how long does it take to have an effect and perhaps help them?
That's hard to say right now. In the time frame we studied, just in the cells, it was just 2 or 3 days treatment. But it's hard to know. You would hope that you would imagine that from what we know about how the drug gets distributed in the body, that it will be able to start working straight away. But I don't know at this point how long you would expect it to be before you would see the effects.
Dr. Paula Bates, thank you so much for joining us at this early hour from your home in Louisville. But thank you for that. And we'll continue to follow any developments on this, certainly when the trials begin. And best of luck with that. A lot of people are hopeful for this and other treatments. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Right, thank you. Again, that was Dr. Paula Bates joining us, a professor at University of Louisville. We're going to have more details on this potential new breakthrough announced from the university tonight at 4, 5, and 6 as we get into the details of exactly how it might work. And we may package that along with some of the other work that's being done on potential treatments. But again, I say universities don't go public saying they appear to have found a breakthrough until they're fairly certain they have something that shows an awful lot of promise. As I said, Vanderbilt and Meharry all doing some fantastic work toward that path. But as far as I know, this is the first university in the country to make an announcement to this level. But as you heard, she says it's not a cure yet. But we're not talking years. We're talking months. And it sounds like the goal for her medical team is not to have this drag on and hopefully have a drug that can treat patients sick with COVID-19 before a vaccine is made. And isn't that important? We need that. So that's how that stands. Do you want me to take a